Hi, Kara here again. I was going to change my clothes or do something different with my hair, but you know why? You guys, we're friends. And I just got done recording the oral reading fluency decision tree video, and we're just going to move right on to the oral reading fluency. How do I do it in my lesson when I'm actually doing regular text in my lesson? Okay, so let's talk about that. And I'm going to go back to the document cam here. Here is what the page looks like for, again, oral reading section, but we're in the regular text, remember. So we have already figured out what grade level text we're going to use for this. Okay, and now we're in the lesson and we're actually going to do it. A few things to note here. It says story name, source, and grade level. So the story I'm going to use today is called Payphones. And it is, the source is Dibbles. Yeah. And it's second grade level text because that's what I found was the level at which my student needs to work. Okay. So notice that you as the trainee, when you see this without anything written on it, there's just a blank line right here. You need to type this in ahead of time. You have thought about this ahead of time. Now, in terms of title, by the way, or story name, some don't have a story name. Like I don't think Acadience probes actually give their stories a name. But I do think they number their probes, their progress monitoring probes. So if that were the case, I could always, instead of giving it a title, I could say progress monitoring number 10 or whatever it was, right? And again, so then that would probably say Acadience and then grade level 2.0 or just 2. Okay. So if there's no title, you do need to have some way of knowing which one you used. All right. So there we go. Okay. Now I have 2 bullet points here to remind you that the intervention cycles will continue until the words correct per minute goal is met. There's an accuracy of 100% and the prosody is 3, or until time runs out for this section. Okay. This might not always happen, but this is the goal, is that we're going to keep intervening until we get this data right here. Okay. And there's a nice little friendly reminder that student must track under the text. All righty. So I start over here and you can see it says first read, which is also sometimes called a cold read. And that means that the student has never seen this before, this particular passage. Reading it cold means they're just not familiar with it at all. They've never read it before. Okay. So just so you know, that's what cold means. The student is going to read for 90 seconds. And the teacher is going to make a slash, or I noticed on mine, I made a bracket, however you want to note it, when the 60-second mark comes up. So even though, notice here, guys, the kid is going to read for 90 seconds. The teacher is going to make a slash noting when the 60-second mark happens, because that's what all of our data is focused on, is a 1 minute. Okay. But there's a reason we're going to keeping them reading for 90 seconds, and I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, so I'm starting here with the cold read. Please notice there's no preview. This is not controlled text. This is regular text. So there is no preview. There is simply giving them the directions. I want you to read this for me. If there's any words you don't know, I'll tell them to you. Just like you give the same directions you give when you actually give the probes themselves. Okay. All right. So here is what here's the data for this cold read so far. Okay. And so what you notice here is that I marked, what the errors were. And if I'm fluent with this, and if I had time, and I actually try to write what actually did happen. Okay. Or what they did say, right? Instead, if it was something like that, sometimes they just omit words and you don't know what they were going to say, what they said. That's fine too. Notice I use a bracket. You can also just use a slash like it says in the directions. I don't care really. I just want to make sure that you have to make some kind of mark noting when the 60 seconds was up. But guys, look, the student is going to keep reading. Remember, the student reads for how many seconds? 90. So a whole minute and a half is where how far you let them read. And notice that I keep marking things that they did errors. I keep marking errors too, even past the 60 seconds, okay? And you don't have to do this, but I do like to put I put like a star right here. And to me, that's indicating that's like where the 90-ish second happened. And again, it's 90-ish second. You don't have to stop them immediately at 90 seconds. You do have to be very accurate with the 60-second thing, but the 90 is a little bit more flexible. But please do not let them read for, 5 minutes. Then we have no time for intervention. So 90 seconds approximately, let them get to the end of a sentence or whatever. Okie dokie. So let's see here. I need to then write down my data. So they've read for 90 seconds. I marked when a minute happened, right? I'm still marking errors even throughout the 90 seconds because I'm going to intervene on all of this, not just the 60 second. Okay. But now I need to take a minute and do my data. Okay. So while you're doing your data, there's no reason why your kid couldn't be silently reading the passage again, even if they don't get through the whole thing. You just need a minute so that you can get this data. Okay. So my words correct per minute. How do I do that? Well, I go to my 60 seconds. I figure out how many words is that word right there. Well, that's why these numbers over here are so handy dandy. Because I know that the word streets was 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73. Okay. So I usually just go like this, 73. And how many errors happened within that 90 seconds? Not the whole thing, just within that 90. 1, 2, 3, 4 errors happened. So -4. That gives me 69 words a minute. Okay. And to do my accuracy. Okay, so my sister's texting me. Sorry about that. Accuracy would be 69 divided by 73 is, oh, look at that, 94.5. So great, I'm at 95% accuracy because I can round up. And I got 69 words a minute. So correct words per minute, here's my first read, 69, accuracy was 95. Now, you guys couldn't listen to her read, so you don't know what the prosody is, but the prosody rubric is the same as it was for controlled text. So I just, again, do a general noting of the prosody. Maybe she was a 2. I don't know. That's for you to decide. Now, I need to set a goal. I need to set a words correct per minute goal. The way that I do that is I take the words correct per minute and I multiply by 1.2. In other words, my goal is that she reads 20% more words than she did the first time. Why? Because I'm going to intervene with her. So I hope she gets better, right? But I need to know I need to have some kind of goal. How will I know that she got better, right? So I take 69, because that was my correct words per minute, times 1.2, and I get 82.8, so we'll say 83. Remember up here, intervention cycles continue until words correct per minute goal is met. Well, now I know what my goal is. Please note, it's going to be different every single time you do this. Her goal for this passage is 83. And here's the formula for how to do that. Okay. All right. Excellent. Now I come over to this box because now I need to intervene. I'm not going to do a second read right away because I have no reason to believe they're going to get any better if I don't do something about it. The whole point of this is to provide appropriate intervention. So these should all look very familiar. None of these interventions are new. We know that there's different circumstances around which we could potentially use them, okay? They all have to do with repeated reading. So let's take a look here. If 98% or more accuracy, I might do one of these, but I've got a 95% accuracy, right? I don't have 98. So I'm probably going to go ahead and do my one for down here, this one, the error word phrase drill. Okay. So what would that look like? Well, let me show you. So notice that I made note of the errors on here. This is my page. But for error word phrase drill, because there are multiple errors, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm sorry, that's a little bit hard to see. No, that's all right. Here's the student paper. Okay. Now, see, no numbers or anything. An error word phrase drill looks like this. I'm going to tell her the word. So really, this would be like facing my student, right? Kind of like this. Here's my student over here. And I would say, this is were. What's the word? Student says, were. Repeat after me. Was, were, did, not, called. Okay, so I've told her what the words are. That's error word drill, and now the phrasing. Remember, I'll probably be pretty directive here in terms of noting the phrases myself. This is something that eventually, when kids get more practice doing it, they can kind of try to do that phrasing on their own. And do you remember what we think about when we try to make phrases? They're not just random. There's typically one content word per phrase. Okay. So I kind of in my head, kind of say this sentence in my head. There were no cell phones back then. So there were, I kind of said, okay, so there were, repeat. Then the student will scoop. They can scoop with their, I'll use a finger as if I'm the student. There were, what is it? There were, one more time. There were, okay, good. A payphone was long, okay. Was long, what is it? Was long, what is it? Was long, again, was long. It was about this, okay. I can do, it was about. It was about, it was about, it was about. Payphones were, most payphones were, payphones were, payphones were, payphones were. Again, not an exact science, okay? But that's okay. As long as it kind of makes some sort of sense. You know, I can tell you that we would never have a phrase boundary straddling a comma, because guess what, guys? A comma is the author's way of telling you to pause. So obviously, the comma has to be the end of a phrase. So we would never, for example, scoop long black. Like there's a comma there because the author's telling us, hey, you should probably pause. Okay, now look at how notice how these were the 4 words they erred on within the 60 seconds. And isn't it interesting that they're all the past tense of to be? So that's a whole nother discussion we could do. And kids often do this, is that they change tenses within the same story. Okay. Clearly this is written in the past tense, so we could have a quick little talk about that. Hopefully we've already taught the to be lesson. Okay, but I'm still going to intervene here, even on the words that aren't in the 60 seconds. Because why? Why am I going to do that? Because I want them to read more words the next time they read. If I'm training for a marathon, then I can't just keep running 10 miles at a time, right? My end goal is to run 20, however many that is, a lot, 6 miles. I can't just keep going, oh yeah, I'm training. I run 10 miles every day. Well, okay, that's great, but you're probably going to want to try to, run 26 miles at some point. So I have to intervene on text that goes beyond that minute mark from the cold read. Okay. Here's something kids do a lot. They'll say didn't, right? You didn't hear or didn't not hear. You guys know that that's what they do a lot. So I would scoop you did not. You did not. You did not. One more time. You did not. Okay. You called. Person you called could hear you. Okay. You called. What is it? You called. Make sure the student is scooping and saying the phrase like we want them to say it. And then, so you see how I went over the key missed words first, made sure they knew what they were, right? Were, was, were, did, not, called. Okay. There were, scoop it 3 times, scooping. And then what I could do is even randomly now point to the phrases and they randomly say them. So if I point here, the student has to say, you did not, was long, you called, payphones were, it was about, you did not, there were, was long. Notice this is completely random. I don't have to keep track of which ones I've, done, whatever. They've just now had a whole bunch of practice reading those words and within the phrase that they're found, right? Okay, so remember that was the student's paper. The scooping happens right there. So then they're going to read again. All right, so I said error word phrase drill was my intervention that I did. And now I'm going to do what's called a hot read. It's actually the second time that the kid reads it and I take data. Okay. But it's called the hot read because now they have seen the text before. Not only have they seen it, they've practiced it. So you'll see that word hot read, and that's what that means. So blah, blah, blah. They read for a minute, same exact thing. If you don't exclusively use these pens, I highly recommend that you do because they're like the only pens that I allow in my office area because you've got the different colors and it's super, super helpful. How are you going to know which one of these was from the first read and which one was from the second read, right? So I always try to pick a different color for the second read. Doesn't matter which color, just different than the first one. So read. I'm listening once again. Hopefully this time they're going to get further than than they did the first time with that 60-second thing. But either way, I still am going to mark however far it was they got. Let's just say they got all the way to here. I don't know. I'm just picking that and they missed that word and that word. I'm just making this up. That's fine. That might happen, of course, that they skip a word. Like if they skip a word, I usually do this, meaning like that they omitted it, make that little like that. Sometimes if they specifically leave off a part of a word, like if the kid said the person you call could hear you, I specifically slash through the part that they left off sometimes. So anyway, you guys can come up with your own way of doing things, but all right, so let's now see where this 60-second one is. That would be 102. So 102 minus 2 is, this is 100. Ooh, just happens to be 100 words minus 2. So this time it was 100 minus 2, which is 98. And oh, I honestly, truly just randomly picked that and it just so happens that it's going to be a 98%, right? So this time they got, here's my second read, 98 words with 98% accuracy. Let's just say their prosody is at 3. And now I can ask myself, are the words correct per minute, accuracy, and prosody goals met? Well, words correct per minute, that one was met because what was our goal? 83, and they got 93. So yay! However, their accuracy is still not at 100, right? Because remember, the goal is 100. So this is a no, but this is a yes. So prosody of 3, just accuracy was still at a less than 100. So sometimes depending on how much time is left, which there should be if you've only done one read and one round of intervention. So we're going to say no, they do. So now look, they're going to do another round of intervention. And no, isn't that handy dandy that it's already over there on that side? Now look though, this time I already, I'm probably going to choose a different intervention because now their accuracy is better than it was before. It was, it was 95 before, now it's 98. So what I might do is pick a different one of these, pick one of these instead. Okay. In this case, because their prosody was a 3, I might actually do choral reading. Because it seems they're pretty good at the phrasing in terms of they don't need to hear what good phrasing sounds like. But if we do choral reading together, then what were those other errors that they made? What I might do is go ahead and I can always do really any combination of these things, guys. It's not like it's only can be one or the other. So what I might do is highlight for them those. Now they missed 2 different words, right? They got these right, but they missed this one. So I might say, this is old. What is it? Old. Phones. What's this? Old. What's this? Phones. And I might even bring these back in if I want to, whatever, I don't know. But if we choral read it, when they get to this, they're going to hear me say old, right? If we read together and I'm kind of pushing the pace, and remember, I'm going to track above and they track below, and we're supposed to be reading it together. They're going to hear me say the correct words when they get to these. Okay. Now, guys, notice that I'm not using, there's a whole section of this that I'm not going to use down here, right? I'm not going to even end up using all 203 words of this. That's okay. Trust me, it's fine. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll have the kid take their copy of it with them. Of course, as long as it's not my observation lesson, because I'm going to need my supervisor to see this beautiful work right here. But sometimes I'll let them take it, right, with them to finish reading it if they want to. But please do note, the goal is not to read the whole thing is there so that you have plenty to intervene with, but you might not get through it all. Okay. Depending on your student, the other thing you could do is actually use the same thing twice, especially if you're maybe outside of the practicum situation and you see kids, maybe more frequently, but for less time. There's no reason to leave this stuff wasted down here. You certainly could have them. This is now a cold read. Remember, anything they haven't read before is a cold read. So it's very possible for you to potentially use this part of it and on another day if you want. Okay, so did my second round of intervention here. Okay, and guess what? Then they read it again. And so thank goodness I have a whole nother color right here on my pen, my fancy pen. Okay. And so notice that the goal is still 83. The goal never changes. Notice I'm not making a new goal. I am not making a new goal based on this hot read. I stick with what my goal was from all the way up here on the cold read. And so remember what I was doing here was now I'm really trying to get that accuracy up. Okay. And so just for fun, let's say they read all the way down here to the word quiet, which look at that, previously took them 90 seconds approximately. And now they've read, look at that, it's 112, no errors. So that's 112 and 100% accuracy. Look at that quick math. So in the third read, they got, what did I say, 112, accuracy 100, prosody 3. And now I can say, yes, they did meet all those. And look what it says, move to comprehension questions. And look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Look here how I have comprehension questions pre-thought of. I have thought about this before the kid even walked into my room, and I wrote them down, right question and answers here. Now, Kara, I don't know how far my kid's going to read. So how do I know if I can ask those questions? Well, then you ask questions from various points in the story. And then you try to ask at least 2 of them if you can. So is it okay not to ask comprehension questions? No, it is not okay not to ask them. You have to do this part. It's the whole point of why we read in the first place. But if you only end up asking, 2 of these 3 questions, that's fine. So I might ask, how big were payphones? And I want them to say something about a shoebox. Why? Because that's what it said in the story right here, a large shoebox. Okay. Where could people find payphones? They says outside of busy stores, in front of stores or on the street, right? And what did you have to put in the slot to make a call on a payphone? And you had to put in coins. Now, this story is particularly hilarious because, kids don't have any clue whatsoever what a payphone is. And so much less, maybe they don't even know what a coin is. I don't know. So anyway, that then is, you make a check mark there, noticing that you mark down the questions you ask. If you didn't end up asking this one, you can cross it off. Or you can write, oh, the kid said, I don't know. Oh boy, don't know what coins are. Okay. So there you go, guys. Important things to remember is that this is now much more data driven. We're very specific about our 1-minute timing. We're very specific about what we mark as an error, right? Insertions are not errors. Repetitions are not errors. And if they're struggling for more than 3 seconds, we give them the word and mark it as an error. So remember also too, it doesn't say anything about on here about telling them to code it or anything like that. Remember, this is not controlled for what we've taught. This is kind of only controlled by grade level. So it's just that there are differences here from this and the controlled text that you're used to doing. But the interventions are pretty much the same, no matter if you're doing regular or controlled. Okay, so thank you very much.